building here, this is the Hirshhorn Museum, and it was built in the 1970s. So at the time we were doing our project, it was at its 50-year lifespan. The big part of our project was the facade replacement as well as a roof repair. We probably had about 4 to 6 months for demo, and then installation, I want to say about 8 months or so. I've had multiple people ask me how we got the panels so clean, and the answer to that is we put on 675 new panels on the outside. These are all placed by hand, finished by hand, and installed by hand. Every single panel was reviewed by the precaster at their plant, and then each panel got about a 35-point inspection on site when it got delivered. So these were very heavily scrutinized. The biggest goal is making sure there's the consistency and the texture and exposure. The small panels are about 4 feet tall. The large panels are about 14 feet tall. Doesn't quite look like that from down here. And then what I want to highlight are the edges of the building. So we do have a perfect circle here. The client was very concerned about these edges being nice and consistent, and so we had a lot of checks along the way to make sure our circle was fitting together perfectly and that our joints were within the appropriate tolerances. They really wanted it to look uniform. So with that consideration, there was a question about why don't you just reuse the existing precast panels and put it back? But we actually grew the building's face by 3 inches all around to be able to add in the insulation and air barrier. What that did is posed challenges for us to make sure that we were now putting our new precast panels on consistently in this new 3-inch offset. The precast team was really key to this, having the knowledge about what attachments they could use. It was all delegated design, so there was some general information from the engineering team, but making those last connection steps, checking for the blast requirements. So this is almost something they were doing by feel. It's not as quantitative to say, okay, I've blasted it this much, but for them to look and understand that this is the amount of exposure they need and then do it from panel to panel for 675 panels, that's where I really feel like it's almost artistic as opposed to being just, okay, I've hit my mark here. It was, is this consistent and is this achieving what it's supposed to look like?
Aesthetic consistency.
Yes.
My name is Sprig Lynn. I am the owner of our family business, Universal Floors. This is the Mellon Auditorium, built in 1935, or finished in 1935. It is the largest ornamental floor in Washington, D.C. It's about the size of 3 basketball courts. This is the removal. So this is a historic reproduction. And this is a Chevron, which is supposed to be cut on an exact 45. Very important. We get it. It was mismilled slightly. We had to recut all thousands of feet. We couldn't send it back. Had to be done. We recut every single piece on the job to make it come out perfect. We replaced 164 sheets of plywood. We reattached 420 sheets of plywood. We did it through drilling and putting lead sleeves in by hand and drilling small holes and ejecting adhesive underneath of it. So we start center layout. We spent 4 days laying out lines with lasers and old school braided fishing line. So for 4 days we laid out lines, checked lines, we checked the old lines because these have points here, here, here. All of these doors had to be exact lineup or it threw off everything. And when we start center layout, just like they do a gymnasium, if you have any sway or swift drift to one side of it, you've just cut it by 50% by starting in the center. This floor is not off. You'd be damned if you find a 16th of an inch off. That's how precise it was. 90% of this floor was installed with manual nailers that they used right after World War II. The reason why is we can control the nailing. So you can see how many thousands of pieces of wood we had to cut. So we set up a laser festool saw to cut one end, and then the other end was a we call a festool track saw, and we cut that perfect and regrooved it with a router, and then started the whole process. So I had one man, all he did is cut wood all day long, every day. I've done the Oval Office, fancy floors, kings, queens. This one I'm very, very proud of because I work with my sons on it, and we had no problems with it. At the end, everyone loved it, and this is the largest ornamental floor I know of that's installed raw wood, sand, and finish.
The planning that went into executing and getting everything here on time was a big part of it with the team that we had. So some fun facts that we have for the project. We had 269,044 feet of ductwork. That equates to 51 miles. 24,874 linear feet of linear diffuser, 4.71 miles. 14,290 registers, grills, and diffusers. We worked a total of 124,568 man hours in our shop. 233,398 man hours in the field. We completed the project in 3 years with a peak manpower of 130 men.
This was by itself a monster to tackle, but they had to tackle it. Our sheet metal team had to tackle it at an accelerated speed as well. So a lot of sweat, blood, and tears went into this, and a whole lot of strategic planning. Tractor trailer after tractor trailer going through this. This is some of the biggest duct that I've actually seen on any project that I've been working with.
When we first got up here, we had to get all this high duct up in about a week because the plumber was coming in to set all this equipment underneath of it. And we set all the risers out here with a tower crane. We got the unfortunate short end of the stick where we had to work at the end of the day to set the risers. The noise ordinance out here is 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So we got the 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. window with the crane setting risers out here. All right, so this is the small event center. We had to come in here and lay all this stuff out before they came in and put their steel up there that support. There's these racks with the lights on them. And then they came in and put the steel up, and then afterwards we came back through and hung all this duct. And then we had to lay out all the diffusers that are in between the wood slats. And we had to work with the drywall guy to make sure that everything lined up perfectly, because as you can see, we can't really get back up to move it once they put the wood in.
Clark's schedule had the trades stacked. You didn't have time to fall down. So the guys really, they stepped up their ball game, and they really moved to get everything installed. Like I said, the 51 miles of ductwork where they really had to push to get through to keep the flow of the project going. Basically the same crew that started the project, finished the project.